second as I get back to the shared screen. All right, we are ready.
Welcome to the June 23rd, 2022 BAR small meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Steinberg. The other board members present today are Bill King, Fillmore Wilson, and Glenn Gardner. City staff present today are Frank Pinto, BARS Administrator, and Isabel Gardner, Preservation Planner. The order of today's meeting will be as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview of the project given by city staff for the benefit of the board and the public. This will be followed by applicant presentation. There will be a 10-minute time limit on the applicant's presentation. Please state your name first and last for the record if you're speaking on behalf of the applicant, and everyone, designers, consultants, owners should speak during the applicant's presentation. The board can ask questions of the applicant at any time by customary do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by a period of public comment. If you're speaking as a member of the public, when you approach the microphone, please state your name again first and last for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. And following that, the applicant will have a period of 5 minutes to clarify or respond to anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations. After the applicant response period, the applicant's presentation will be closed and we'll move into board discussion and a vote. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred: 119 and 121 Broad Street, both of those items, 31 Burlington Street, 62 Queen Street, and 151 Wolfie Street. Now I'll turn it over to Frankie for some not virtual meeting protocol, for some in-person meeting protocol.
Sorry, Lindsay, we haven't got everything updated.
Oh no, that was on me. I'm so used to saying virtual. For 2 months.
All right. Information on each application, including documents were submitted by the applicant. And everything will be available online at charleston-sc.gov/BAR. To view or participate in the board meeting, you see the following options. There's in-person and YouTube streaming. Written public comment, the deadline to submit is 12 p.m. one business day before the meeting. Comments were to include name, address, telephone number, meeting date, project number, and they were provided, if they are submitted, provided to the board in advance. We did not have any written comment provided since those items have withdrawn. Applicants have been required to register and submit documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation. That includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to proceed to the next slide. All applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. Written public comments received by the deadline of noon, a day before the meeting, were provided to the board. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and their vote on a motion. Each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. Results will be posted on the city website. Item number 1.
Agenda item number 1 is approval of the minutes from the May 26, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Not opposed. Agenda items number 2 and 3 have been withdrawn. This is deferred by the applicant. This is 119 through 121 Broad Street. And we are on agenda item number 4, 304 King Street. Frank, you should give us an introduction and overview of the project, please.
304 King is requesting conceptual approval of storefront alterations. It is a category 4, circa 1912 in the Old and Historic District. This is the location of the building on King Street. The existing site, some context photos of King, and sandboard maps showing the history of the building. And then we do have some historic images when it was the Princess Theater and Southern Lumber or Southern Furniture. And with that, I will turn it over to the applicant.
Thanks some more on the RD Studio. Rocco Toledo was not able to attend today. This is our second presentation of this project. I believe it was received last, I think it was maybe at the end of April is when we presented. It was pretty well received, but there were some small changes that we wanted to do, or you guys wanted us to incorporate. Mainly just on the facade and some of the finishes. What you see now is just the site plan showing location. Go to the next slide. That's the existing building as it is today. Go to the next slide. This is the rear of the building, which isn't pertinent to this application. Go to the next slide. That would be the ground floor plan. Just showing the layout of the restaurant. This would be the second floor plan. Go to the next slide. The roof plan. And I believe the next one will be some elevations. Changes that were made are the comments that we received last time we were here. You guys did not approve of the natural reclaimed that we had on the side. So what we did is replaced the natural color reclaimed wood boards to a white wood. And we're actually providing a picture to kind of give it some character. And you can see on that elevation there. We're providing a tile signage to maintain the branding of the restaurant. We'll show us that on. We replaced the natural wood doors and window with a white clad window and door. We're using box holding doors from Marvin, which is the Coastline series. And we're using a Marvin entry door and window system, which is their ultimate series. Also with the storefront replacement, using the Marvin systems. You guys also did not approve of the overhead storm shutter that we had to protect the store. So we did that. I'll walk you through these slides here. That's an elevation of the front facade. You can see the window and the bifolding doors are now white instead of natural. The blue color represents the tile, and the white, obviously the white color. The other two elevations are the rear elevations and the side elevations. Go to the next slide. This is a section through the storefront entry. You can see that we've removed the overhead cooling door. But pretty much everything else stayed as it is, except for changing the colors. As you can see, the blue photo of that's going to be kind of the tile. That's the branding of the restaurant. And below that is the actual signage feature that we're planning on putting on there. And you can go to the next one. These are renderings of the facade. You can see the branded signage element, the bifolding doors to the left, and the entry door to the right, and then the white flatted window system above. And I think this addresses all the comments that we received on the last video.
Do you have our board members have any questions for the applicant?
So we just verifying the clear glass. Clear glass. Those folding doors.
Yeah, on the actual facade, the existing building where the arch is about 4 foot in front of where the storefront is. So when the bifolding doors do open, they will open within the footprint of it.
Not out onto the side.
Not onto the sidewalk. It is set back about 4 feet. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have anyone speaking to the public?
I'm Carol with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant for reaching out to us on this project. We appreciate the effort to work with the proportions of the historic opening. And while we think this proposal is moving in the right direction with painted wood rather than natural finish, we would like to see this design better relate to the configuration of other King Street storefronts. And we conveyed to the applicant that we encourage them to pursue a more traditional urban storefront with fixed windows and a paneled knee wall and a clearly differentiated entry based on study of nearby precedents.
Anyone else speaking from the public? Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations.
Observation, staff appreciate the change in the fenestration and the addition of the wooden paneling to the facade. The board and staff have, I don't know what is going on with my comments, I apologize, board. Board and staff have previously I suppose as I expressed, I assume, that the reclaimed wood is inappropriate for the location. Staff recommend, that would be regarding the signage, still use the reclaimed wood. We recommend repeating the blue tile and the right angle signage. And we also had a concern about the bifold doors encroaching into the sidewalk, but that's been addressed. And then we just had regarding the illumination of signage, per BAR policy, illumination is inappropriate and we recommend the removal of the lighting elements for both the right angle and the facade sign. And the applicant has already confirmed that that was clear glass. So staff recommendation is conceptual approval with staff comments and final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Did the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment and the city staff comments?
Okay. As for the bifolding doors, the doors are not windows. Doors all along King Street rest on the floor. They do not rest on a knee wall. If you put a window in, they typically rest on the knee wall. The purpose, of bifolding doors is to, kind of engage the public, blur the line between the interior and exterior, and engage the historic nature of Charleston.
Thank you. All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and vote.
I agree with staff comments and recommendation. The painted has made the difference. Definitely that helps. I agree with staff comments.
I'm comfortable with that as well. I think you said last time, that anytime you do have these sort of photos of what it originally was intended. What evolves through the years. Was there this restaurant iteration had its moment, and then down the road, I'm sure the storefront will. So my point is, I'm glad we have the photos, so this building continues to evolve. What it was in its scale, but I think the application that we're looking at tonight is much more appropriate, less stylized than what we.
I agree with my fellow board members and staff. I think it's come a long way. Certainly, previous iteration. Recommendations.
Another quick question for the applicant. Is the illumination of the sign, is it only overhead or is there any illumination like coming from behind the sign? Is it?
No, it's basically a tile attached to the facade, and they have probably a gooseneck light that's going to light that sign, just for the taco sign.
Okay.
Or some kind of light that the client will probably pick out. And then you have the blade sign that will probably have similar type of lighting, just lighting up the sign. So.
Okay. Can I ask the policy statement, the illumination, I always think of that as being illuminated, the actual sign, but does that cover when it's a gooseneck sign?
It does talk about in the policy, internal and external illumination.
Okay, so external is what you all.
It would be what they're proposing shining on it. I mean, you guys do have the ability to approve it if you feel like the use, especially if they're open in the evening,
Mhm.
and lighting would be required. You have the ability to approve that.
Since we don't really, I don't think we have the detail for that in front of us at the moment. Do we?
No,
And actually, in the presentation, there is examples of some.
So I think it's eight. Yeah, that's that's why I asked the question. The way it's done in that, the bar time, it's the one that's actually colored blue.
Yeah, this is the actual light fixture that's being proposed on, I guess you call it the 90-degree sign, the lane sign. See it here, kind of how it's represented. And then this would be an example of what this would be. You would have a similar light fixture to this that would shine on just the bar taco.
I'd like to know what my fellow board members think about that sort of illumination.
I think this is much more in line with what we have allowed for restaurants in the past. The internal type illumination. I mean, there's going to be that, I assume. I think this.
To your point,
Have to use other applications for various forms of illumination, signage like this. I would say maybe the exact specification of the signage could still go to staff for their approval. But I don't understand sort of the need necessity to sign, to eliminate the signage for recognition at night. So I would say that the illumination is not inappropriate. It's just making sure that the fixture is appropriate. I would think staff would, that is part of the final review. If it gets to a final review by staff, that was a recommendation.
What is the dimension of the lake sign? I can't.
this is difficult to read. This image.
it's very small drawing.
I just tried to blow it up. but it's-
Yeah, it's 3 foot wide by 1 foot 8 tall. The actual sign piece. So 3 foot.
Small.
And then what is the width of the tile, the vertical sign?
This one here,
Correct.
it's basically showing the space between the entry door and signs.
Would you say something?
It's 220 by 86.
Approximately 2 foot by 6.
Okay. I'm going to try a motion. For approval. as submitted. All of the staff comments have been addressed during the presentation. So approval is submitted. Approval of the gooseneck light on the vertical tile sign is submitted. And deferral of the light sign for study for a smaller pin light in that location. By staff.
Can you repeat the deferral of
The
the,
deferral of the deferral of light sign lighting in preference of a smaller pin light. I think that light fixture is relatively large considering what you can purchase currently. I think they could essentially make the look at that pin light go away.
Just a big scale up, you can see the light.
So I'm just asking for a smaller pin light that staff could
priority by staff?
follow with the staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval as submitted with approval of the gooseneck light on a tile sign as submitted and deferral. Deferral of the blade sign lighting in preference of a smaller pin light and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
So,
Put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
yeah, in favor.
chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Oh, staff was also going to just kind of point out to the applicant, and we didn't know if this was intentional or not. In the photo you had of the bar taco, the tile, the little dragonfly symbol was kind of centered on the word. And in the drawing, it was off-centered. So we weren't sure if that was intentional or not. We just wanted to make sure, however y'all intended.
It's probably just the drafting. Bartaco has a logo that they.
That was our assumption. We just wanted y'all to know in case it was an issue for you.
Thank you.
I need to borrow your notes on some of these motions.
You can read them. All right, agenda item number 5 is 57 Berry Street. So if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
Okay, 57 Berry is requesting conceptual approval for new construction of a single-family residence. It is new in Harleston Village in the Old and Historic District. This is the location on Berry. Existing site photo. Some context of Berry Street. And the Sanborn map of what existed of Berry. And with that, we will turn it over to the applicant.
Joel Adrian, designer for 57 Berry. We were here and referred to months ago on a marathon meeting. And I believe that if we look through really to the elevation sheets, I think where it starts, we'll kind of start to show the contrast of previous bill and then submittal for us to look at. I think what I took away from previous meeting was overall the form was agreeable, detailing and the skin of the plan that we were using at the time was being worked on. We were for a county specific foundation and the appearance of arch underneath that's their tower element. Looking at that garage door, next time garage door, it was a full step of the house, conversation about the step of reiteration and changes. Obviously, you can see that the foundation of the foundation. Step one. Yes, separate out the center mass as the stucco elements, and then side, 5%, I should say. That's the so that I was signing out the wings, which will be at the bedroom side, or the bedroom side, and those are the elements of the house. The large windows and stair balconies with a detail of different wood, with window, with trim. There's a number of different comments about the lighting window, number of so elevation side around the left side, just the back side of the door. Left hand. Go to the next side elevations. Address the comments that we received with our changing materials. Also provide, I think, the very next slide is going to be just certain lots of appears in circles. So variance, fencing shown, and detail, and give you an idea of what we can. So now those elevations show. Some stucco piers and some higher grade difference between the fully designed actual iron. 3/4 inch pickets, top rail, 2 inches. That's what we have really gotten into that detail. Going through, I think we have some building sections and the very last sheet. Set shows 57 vary in relation to the adjacent house. There, and then 3D images made it.
They did.
And so now you can see the colors are generic at this point, but this is just kind of giving you a view of what the house form is at this point with the siding on wings, the stuff on the center. I think they're concerned about the control joints. You can see the control joints look like they're in logical locations and they're not too frequent. I guess with that, I'll just answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Front elevation, slide, I think. I noticed those control joints are called out on the stair tower. They're 1-7. Are there any control joints in the?
So yes,
In the second part? I can't. Are they? I see them. I'm having a hard time seeing them all.
That center exactly.
Yeah, there's a.
Center and
Yeah. So there's a vertical one centered, and then there are ones horizontal centered on the
mullions on the center style
on the meeting rail and the window.
Yes.
And I see it going back to the side. Thank you.
Will you got any questions? We'll move into public comment. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. I was not at the previous meeting when this item was heard. HCF has reviewed the application for conceptual approval at 57 Barry Street, and with concerns about the architectural direction of this project. One, we do not feel that the design of this proposed building is compatible with the surrounding buildings or the larger Harleston Village neighborhood. The dominant roof is our primary concern. We recommend restudying the roof form to reduce the roof height and massing. The fenestration on this proposed structure is also out of character, and we recommend simplifying the window patterns, especially on the front elevation. Two, while we are supportive of constructing new buildings in this area at the required base flood plus 2 feet, it appears that this project exceeds this height to accommodate parking underneath. We are concerned about this condition and feel that the mass should come down. Furthermore, the townhomes that face Berry and Halsey Streets were carefully designed to reduce relate to the street and hide the fact that these structures are elevated. The prominent base on this proposed project accentuates the height and does not successfully engage the street or the neighborhood. We recommend deferral so that the architectural direction can be restudied. Thank you.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. In keeping with our previous comments, the Preservation Society is not supportive of this proposal. The form and character of this building are highly suburban, and we continue to feel they should be restudied to better relate to the urban residential context of Halsey Park and the Harleston Village neighborhood. The board deferred this request for a restudy of the general architectural direction, which we feel is not substantially changed since the last review. And we continue to feel that the massing, complex roof line, numerous garage openings, and multitude of fenestration types are not appropriate and ask for full restudy. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking from the public? All right. Mr. Adrian, excuse me, sorry. Frankie, if you'll give city staff comments and recommendations, and then you'll have the chance to respond. The one that you gave us is not missing letters.
Yeah, the most prominent portion of the proposed is still the stair tower, which to some degree overshadows the entry. Height, scale, and mass were deemed appropriate at the prior board meeting in which this was reviewed. The applicant should study ways to make the stair tower less overwhelming. For example, consider the use of standard sized windows in the projected mass of the stairway instead of the projecting bay of large windows. The architectural direction is mixing coastal and French style design. The staff recommends choosing one direction. For example, the coastal style details of the louvered panels roof would be enhanced by sufficiently deeper roof overhangs and raised soffits or open rafter tails. We recommend omitting the arched top doors and the curved roof bracket over the door to the driveway. If going for more French styling, we would recommend the use of larger crown molding and detailing under the eave and omitting the flat frieze door. Fit the pair of arched doors in lieu of a standard rectangular door or a single door with side lights, which might give room for windows of regular width on either side of the door. The doors are to be recessed fully into the wall. On the applicant to describe how the Juliet balcony railings will not interfere with the use or appearance of the use of the shop. Elongated windows at the top level for proportions which are more consistent with those at the main floor. At the stucco portion of the building, the banding above the ground floor and below the main and top floor should be incorporated into the base rather than constructed. Ground floor of the stucco portion should thicken as a projected base. And omitting the shutters at the ground floor entry and keeping these of the base of the building. The details of the pedestrian and drive gate should be coordinated. The pedestrian gate should be lower to be consistent with the fencing. Staff recommendation is conceptual approval with board and staff comments and with staff to work with the applicant on detailing for the preliminary review.
Frankie. Now, Mr. Adrian, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public?
Yes, please. If we could go to the site photos of the adjacent properties. So go back one more. We could blow up the one in the upper right-hand corner. You know, when I hear the comments about the roof form and the massing, and I look at that house and the detailing, I feel like we are being consistent with the neighborhood. And if you look at the house immediately to the left, which is I think 56 Barry, I feel like the height of the foundation is consistent with what's in the neighborhood. And if you went actually even to the probably it's the very last sheet where I showed the two elevations next to each other. I believe that we have listened to your comments. I believe we have looked at and studied the architecture that's there, and I believe that we conform to the other elements of design in the Halsey Park neighborhood.
All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Comments, a list of fairly specific comments. Approval. Question that some fairly specific patients that has a comfort level with
Tori has been doing meetings with the applicant, and she and I are both happy to continue to do so.
Definitely, applicants made a lot of onto the comments before.
I would be okay with that tag.
Applicants willing to continue. I think that is a showing the context.
I guess to remember is,
The townhomes, I think, are a successful design of the property. They're a major anchor to the property and a border compound that is part of it.
for inboard where the homes are located.
Back at the park, you're looking back at those townhomes where occurs. So
The context of this is not really.
Experience of all the park itself, the little green, if you will, in the middle. House comments and recommendations with the statement that the applicant's been work with Tori, and that continue to some degree of refinement as to these specific comments.
Question this building certainly exceeds BFE +2, but I think the surrounding buildings exceed that as well, do they not? And so this building in, exceeding BFE +2 is not out of step with the surrounding building, the rest of the buildings in that development.
That is correct.
Actually, going to work up high. I'm generally loath to go above BFE +2 because it's been our standard, and I think it's there needs to be sort of a compelling reason to do it, and I think perhaps keeping it in line with the surrounding structures is acceptable. I generally agree with staff. I think the fenestration needs restudy. A lot of reasons. But as Bill said, I am staff tackling that. So I'm particularly with that fenestration needs to be addressed, I think. And I think staff's comments are generally on target with that. I think the rest of the staff comments are
I think I generally agree with everything Fillmore and Bill have said. And I think staff's comments are pretty on target with regard to trying to narrow down some stylistic items and perhaps have a little less variety. My notes specifically are that I think the arched garage openings plus the arched entry opening at the ground level plus the arched main level door, I think it's a little too much. I think all of that needs to be simplified a bit. Truthfully, I think from a pedestrian standpoint, having the ground level entry, which is your front door, being the arched shuttered entry could be the most elegant of all of those if the other arches were to go away, essentially. A little window on the front left facade continues to frankly just drive me crazy. It's so suburban. That really has to be rethought, and I don't know, but I can't support it. And Joel, I know the ironwork and all is sort of early on, but it again, kind of the Archie theme is overkill, and I think that really needs to be played down. There are some other stucco garden walls in this neighborhood. I think there's a bit too much ironwork and it's a little too cagey here. And that is an opportunity, I think, to really engage the pedestrian and the landscape realm with a house that is elevated. And so I think you really need to put some study into how this ground level works, and it's not just an aluminum picket 4-foot fence thing. So I really, when you come back, I'd like to see a lot more thought into how that engages the ground plane and the pedestrian.
Gates mentioned in the comment. That be further to say.
Let's not call it a compound,
Well,
but,
I mean, a compound.
but yeah, I think it all needs to be detailed together as one item. Also, I left one thing off, I'm sorry. That little hood over that door by the double garage doors is also suburban item.
Certainly put that as a staff comment.
Sure.
And the little diminutive window on the left wing, I think should be specifically.
I can't drive by and see
Added
that.
in a staff comment. I was lumping the fenestration sort of in general, but it's fine.
Yeah. So would you be asking me to amend your motion or?
I was going to elaborate on basically staff's.
So you were going to make a motion
Basically for what we see
per
here.
staff.
For what we see here, plus your.
Okay.
Plus your comments, as board comments added.
So I'm going to make a draft. See how because I didn't take thorough enough notes, I'm sorry.
I can add some as well. If you prefer.
So I'm going to make a motion for conceptual approval with board and staff comments, with staff to work with the applicant on detailing for the preliminary review, with specific board comments to include further study and detailing of the perimeter fencing and walls and gates, careful study of the form of the garage door openings, elimination or restudy of the hood over the pedestrian entry, elimination or restudy of the small on the left front facade, and study of the arched openings, the arched door openings, with the potential of eliminating one of the two arched doors for emphasis on the front door entry. Okay.
So conceptual approval with board and staff comments, with staff to work with applicant on detailing for preliminary review. We've got a board comment to further study of all perimeter rails and gates. Eliminate the hood on the, which is the hood over the side door. Eliminate or restudy. This is the left entry. All right, and then I have elimination. Is it elimination or restudy or just elimination of the small window?
Elimination or restudy.
Elimination or restudy of the small window on the left wing, the left side facade. Restudy of the arch door openings with potential of eliminating one of the two arch doors for emphasis on front door entry. Or elimination or restudy of
Arched garage door openings.
the arch garage door openings. That's everything. Get all that, Frankie? Okay, do I have a second to Glenn's motion?
Second.
I'll put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yeah.
fair vote to the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Adrian. We're on agenda item number 6, 52 Amherst Street. To give an introduction and overview, please.
Amherst is a field of a staff decision for a shingle roof. The church in question does not have a roof and the last approval. Category 4 on the east side, 1945 in the Old City District. Sanborn maps. A little bit of information. The church originally being part of
We'll open up the applicant's presentation.
My name's Scott Eller. I'm the owner of Ninja Renovation Group. The Mount Carmel Church, I've been working with Deacon James Ebron. They have not had a congregation in that building in at least 5 years because of the contractor, so it was okay just to rip off a roof and try to put shingles. They did not have any permits. Everything got shut down. There has been substantial water intrusion that has happened to this structure. I've been working with Mr. James for about a year now, and we've been going out making sure that we've at least got some synthetic underlayment on there to try and protect the interior as much as we can, while they were trying to work on raising some finances to be able to afford the handprint metal that was originally on there. I believe from what we found, the last picture was like 1989. With that being said, we're trying to get approval to match St. John's Church, which is next door, and that is a architectural moire black shingle through CertainTeed. And then looking at with that being said, we're trying to work with the church and pretty much do this install pro bono for them, just so they can get their congregation back in meeting. They've lost their main bishop during times, and they've just been hit rough all around. So just trying to give them a hand and getting back in their building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question for probably staff and not the applicant. So we believe the roof was removed 5 years ago. Is that?
Got some of the information in our staff observations, if you want me to just go ahead and include that. The last reference that we could find in city records of the roof is the 1985. It talks about there is a photo somewhere around Hugo. Shows a metal roof on the building, but we can't find records of anything being done, repair, replacement, for over 30 years. I've been able to go through some historic aerials and find roof in the current condition, either covered in plastic or tarps for at least 5 years, if not longer. Part of the reason this is coming to the board is it was appealed because we couldn't give a decision on whether or not shingles was replacing in kind, because our last record of the material is 40 years ago. So staff wasn't sure. The church has various memories about a shingle roof being removed, the metal roof being removed. There's a little bit of contention about what was done and what may or may not have been permitted.
40-year-old record you have is a metal roof.
So technically, this would be an after the fact removal with consideration of what is replacing. We just don't have evidence of what was removed without permission. Is that a fair?
More or less. The roof was removed some time ago. We're not pursuing them for after the fact removal, as wasn't so much the church that was responsible. It was a contractor who is no longer located. So we don't want to pursue the incorrect person. We're trying to find a way forward for the church.
Any other questions at this time? Do we have anyone speaking from the public? Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations.
Included in the staff observations, the church at 52 Amherst was constructed in the 1930s and 40s. The structure was the parish house for St. John's Chapel, which is at 815 Hanover. It was constructed in 1840. 2 Amherst has not had a roof in some time. Like I said, that time frame, quite sure we've had somewhere between 5 and 10 years being reported to us. And plastic has covered the top of the structure for some years to prevent water in the church. And the parish house has been a significant part of this community for many years. Staff comments: with no roof on the structure currently, and that the parish house could face additional damage, and without a new roof being added onto the structure soon, there is potential for the loss of historic materials and character defining features. The loss of the structure would be devastating for the congregation and the community. And we will also note that the adjacent church, which it was originally associated with, does have a shingle roof. In light of the fact that there is no roof on the church currently and has not been approval.
Mr. Eller, did you want to respond to anything raised in staff comments? All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion. Vote.
project, and churches seem to be coming up every other month or so. They're just really hanging on, or actually congregation here trying to hang on. There's a building that's trying to hang on. Thank you to the applicant for your offering of pro bono services for this church. That's very appreciate your efforts. I agree with staff. That reason we're here trying to hang on, and there's trying to hang on. And the fact that I would say the more historically significant building adjacent has this type of roof.
I agree as well, and I don't think it would, it's sort of water under the bridge that the roof is gone. There was a metal return on the soffit. It would have been metal, but the metal isn't there, and I think at the moment, the key is to save the building. And, you know, to save the building for the congregation, so I agree with that as well.
I don't disagree with board members. That's the conundrum. Struggle and generally do make it to preserve historic architectural features like historic roofing, and generally require, you know, replacement in kind or an appropriate visually similar substitute if in kind is not available. But this is a conundrum because the building needs to be saved, and there's a gentleman here who is willing to, I think, go to rather extraordinary measures to help accomplish that. And it's more important to save the building, I think, than to generally like to do is just stick more to the letter of our requirements and guidelines. So I am not, with that said, I am not in disagreement with my fellow board members.
I just have one question. Is the little hood over the double door, is that still metal?
Back eyebrow.
On the facing Amherst Street over the double door, there's a little hood over that door. And from the photo that I have access to, it kind of looks like it's metal.
That little line, that is actually still there.
Okay.
And it is still hand turned.
So
I would not touch that.
Okay. So
It's there.
I'm going to make a motion for approval as submitted with the board condition that the metal hood over the door remains intact.
The motion on the floor, for final approval as submitted with a board condition. That the little metal roof above
the metal, yeah, the door hood.
the door would remain intact. Do I have a second for Glenn's motion?
Second.
Vote, Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Eller.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 7, 92 Ashley Avenue. Francis, give us an introduction and overview of the project, please.
Ashley is requesting conceptual approval for addition at the rear of the house. This is the location on Ashley. Site photos. Context of Ashley Avenue.
Everybody, thanks, Ben Demeyer, architectural draftsman for this project at 92 Ashley. What we're trying to get approved is a rear addition onto the house. The house is was built around 1930. It seems to be a American Worcester style. And it's a little smaller than the surrounding houses as shown in that first in that site context photo. So we're trying to get a little bit more space for the owners inside, and also a little bit of exterior covered space for them too, as the house doesn't have any porches on it. So basically what we're doing is coming out with a rear addition out the back, bumping in on each side. And adding some side porches onto it. If you want to go through, I can kind of walk you through the set of plans here. Site context showing the front, the rear, the side. This is just an existing plan. You go to the next one. That's the floor plan for the first floor. Rear addition, you see the walls in black are the new walls we're proposing. You can see how it steps in on each side a little bit to help differentiate from the proposed to the existing. Go to the next slide. That's next. This is second floor, showing the same thing, just the bump in from each side and the porches on the outside to the right. Next slide. This is the roofscape. When I met at the desk with Tori, she suggested that we try to differentiate our addition from the existing. So one of the ways we discussed doing that was to do something a little different with the roof. You can see there we've got a 7 and 12 pitch on the main house. And we've dropped that down to a 5 and 12 and a 3 and 12 over the porch area. So I just want to point that out. You can go to the next slide. This is just some 3D images showing the massing of the structure from various angles. Next slide. It's the front of the house, and I just wanted to point out that the elevation at the top is the existing, and the one below is the proposed. As you can see, not a whole lot is changing here. One of the things I want to point out is that there's an existing wrought iron railing. There's front steps, and it is currently on the inside of those little walls on either side of the staircase. We were proposing to move that existing handrail to the center of the stair walls. We're also wishing to put a gas lantern in that little portico entryway. Next slide. This slide shows the side elevation showing the existing above and the proposed below. Here you can see the massing of the addition. We're proposing it to be brick. One of the ways we wanted to differentiate the old and the new was to change up the window grid patterns. As you can see, we have a 6/1 double hung window here in the rear addition. And you can also note the porches and basically just the addition there. There's a wood stair coming down into the backyard. Next slide. This is from the rear. You can see the way the addition and the house interact with each other. Proposing matching the same brick on the addition, and we're also matching the same architectural shingle for the addition. Next slide. This is the other side elevation showing our addition up against the existing home. The next slide is just some preliminary details we have for the porches, the handrail, and the foundation screening at the porch. We feel like this is a project that not only meets our homeowners' needs, but also is in keeping with the streetscape and standards of the BAR. So we request conceptual approval.
My fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Okay.
The rear chimney is going away, but it fed a furnace. It's an old chimney. It didn't feed a fireplace. It just fed a furnace.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
3D images. And this is probably just a graphic thing. Pair of doors that's on that. I mean, like a brick.
Yes, that's a
graphic here.
That's a graphic. Yeah, that's a drafting error there. There's there will be a little soldier course of brick there above the door, but the molding on the inside that wraps around there will be covering it.
Yeah.
I have one more quick question. Sorry. The construction of the original house was in the 30s. Is it a veneer over frame?
Sorry.
Is it veneer over frame? Or is it, or, you know?
It is.
Okay.
Wood frame.
It's over with veneer over wood.
All right, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation, HCF is a application for conceptual approval for an addition at the rear of 92 Ashley Avenue. We believe the design of the proposed addition is subordinate and compatible with the house and will be minimally visible. However, we feel the addition needs to be more differentiated from the historic structure. We recommend adding a small hyphen between the historic structure and the addition, or potentially lowering the eave line of the new addition to more clearly differentiate the historic structure from the new addition. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking from the public? All right, Frank, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff just wanted to inform the board that the proposal does require a zoning variance on setbacks. But the applicant has already applied and is on the next agenda. And the BZA administrator was going to. You guys are reviewing it tonight. Does not doubt it will be approved. Staff comments. Staff appreciates the subordinate nature of the addition and recommend further differentiating from the historic house. Removing the water table detail in the addition, or maybe changing materials. Echo on the rear portion. Columns on the rear porch seem very light in context with the house. Staff recommends restudying the horizontal windows on the north elevation, as these are not BAR design guidelines. Emphasize vertical proportions. Vertical proportion windows in need. Staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. Did the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations?
Sure, I can do that real quick. We looked at trying to bring the roof down a little bit in the back, and because we have a 9-foot ceiling in the main portion of the house, we weren't able to successfully pull that off without having a drop in the ceiling in the middle there. And we're trying to avoid that. That's why it's not as high as it is.
All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
comments to a couple of staff's comments. Say that worded should say that comments. I think the thing that about the columns of the report, they're borderline. They're a little bit light, but that one engaged pilaster, which appears to be maybe a half column at best. Column might mean a slight shifting about some other element. I believe even that minor little bit of weight shown there would allay my issues as far as the size of the columns. Sure, I was fully understand all the horizontal windows. Oh, right there, the little transom set there. Yeah. Okay, I do agree with that. I would say really, as comments and recommendation to the comment about pilaster. Size of the columns to my
What Bill said, I don't have columns of either. Thickness of that pilaster might be a good idea because it might look a little skinny. But I mean, I think the columns pretty well match the proportions of the porch in the house, and I think the addition is ordinate. I was not a very big addition. I think the roof line works for pretty well. Maybe some consideration to further differentiate it, but the design of this house is pretty simple. I think you know the addition really works. Actually, I don't really have any objection to it. I think staff comments are fine, but I agree with Bill that you know we.
Have anything to add?
Staff comment. Modification to staff's comment number 2 to state that the columns as proposed, the size of the columns as proposed would remain if the pilaster column is more engaged as a full column. And also a note that by staff's comment, observation, I would say. I don't know if that's official part of the record, is an observation a part of, as we say, staff's recommendation and comments, but I would say to add staff's observation as a pertinent point that
Bill, could you repeat your modification of number 2? So the size of the column is proposed.
say that the
Is
size of the
okay.
column proposed are appropriate. However, the pilaster that's engaged as a half column should be pulled out to be engaged more.
We have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with final review by staff with staff comments and a modification of number 2, the size of the column as proposed, is approved. If the pilaster engaged as a half column is a full column width. And this is conditioned upon zoning approval of variance. All right, do I have a second to Bill's motion? Put it to a vote. Glenn?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill? Fillmore?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 8 is 95 Dufane Street. Frankie, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
95 Dufane is requesting replacement of windows to match existing. Existing windows were installed by previous owner without BAR approval. Structure is not surveyed in Charleston Village circa 1970s in the old historic districts. Context photos. Applicant for 95 Dufane here. Dorado. Dorado.
Thank you. No, it's not. I think that's appropriate, given that the applicant can't respond, and so, yes, do we have a second to Bill's motion to defer this application? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, the motion passes, and we'll just. Okay, agenda item number 9, 165 Cummings Street. Frankie, you give us an introduction and overview, please.
165 Cummings is requesting a structure that was not surveyed and went in 1971 in the old city district. On Cummings Street. Right.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Jennings. I'm the architect on the project, which we denied my client, Matt Anderson. Frankie, if you can move to the first, I guess the site plan would be helpful. And we believe the structure was built in 1971. And the application denies for demolition. There are a couple of things that you probably need to consider in addition to the fact that it's oddly placed on the site and it's not I don't believe it's a contributing structure to the neighborhood, but it's also sitting at 10.8, which is 8 and 10. So design below elevation for renovation is 11. So any work that had to be done to this building to renovate it would require it to be raised as well, or elevated. So you can see here the three city board maps. We go to 1955, the 1944, and the 1902. There was a structure, obviously, that occupied the street front like the rest of the neighboring properties at one point. And I think that if the demolition were approved, I think that that would be the appropriate place to put the building on the site. If you could forward, you can see there's some images of the structure itself. Does anybody have any questions?
Include 1971.
That's what Frankie told me today, but the owner of the property that Matt has met with has also said that the structure was built in the 70s as well, so.
City records concur 1971.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Okay, is there anyone speaking from the public?
My name is James Doyle. I am representing the Radcliffe Neighborhood Association. The association requests that this be deferred. We have not been contacted or consulted. Additionally, this is before we knock down a perfectly good house. I think the same family's been in a house since 71. There's no sign of disrepair. Pending some feel for what the applicant's plans are, we request deferral.
Mr. Doyle. Do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
Kevin Middleton, I am the owner of 165 Clement Street. We are the original owners, and I am granting the buyers to knock the property down. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Middleton? Do we have anyone else speaking from the public? Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff is reluctant to recommend demolition of any structure that can be preserved. We will note that were the house to be constructed 1 year later and demolished without board approval. The current house is not placed against the street edge and is therefore a less prominent part of the overall streetscape. Staff recommendation is for final approval.
Ashley, did you want to respond to anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comment?
Sure, I'll just mention that I agree that the Radcliffe Borough neighborhood needs to be involved in the decisions that are made. Right now, we really are just trying to find out if this is a candidate for demolition. Once again, just to remind you that it couldn't be preserved as is right now with any type of work, because if we would generally exceed 50% structure quickly, which would trigger the need to bring it up on flood elevation. And so that's the, I mean, y'all heard this before, that's the already going to take it out of context of where it is right now from that.
As part of city staff, I'd like to point out that the board at this time can only consider demolition. They cannot consider anything that comes after it. It's only the demolition of this structure. We never require drawings to be submitted. Demolition is being presented.
Ashley, were you? All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote. I can start. I drove by the house and looked at it, and I think from a demolition perspective and the surrounding historical character of this area, I don't think that this. I don't think that this preserving this structure would be somehow preserving the historic streetscape of this area. So
I concur. I don't think there is an architecturally redeeming feature about the structure that is there that warrants it to need to remain as far as contributing to the streetscape or the public realm. I'm disappointed that the neighborhood hasn't been contacted and consulted, because that is a key component to the entire process, is to work with your neighbors and your surroundings. So I guess the comfort there is that the board in this neighborhood has full purview over anything that would be built back, whether it is a fence, a wall, or a 10-story condo building, anywhere in between. So we would absolutely be looking at conceptual through final approval and review of anything that goes back here. So that gives me a little bit of comfort in knowing that the public, the neighborhood, the adjacent property owners can all be a part of that process.
Architect has stated the willingness. Believe that is
Yeah, I agree. I do not think it's a
A vote, Fillmore,
yay in favor.
Bill, and chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 10, 31 Darlington Avenue has been withdrawn by staff. We move to agenda item number 11, 0 Gibbs Street. Frankie, will you give us an introduction and overview, please?
Zero Gibbs is requesting elevation of structure due to FEMA requirements. It is a category 4 in Charlestown, circa 1893, in the old and historic district. This is the location on Gibbs Street. Existing site photos. This project originally requested a FEMA variance, and it was denied that by SHPO, which is what we are right now. Here with the applicant.
So if you pull up plans from Dufferin Young, there are the original plans, and there are also elevated plans that elevate shows the originally approved plan. So those are the original, those were originally approved. And the next slide, so it shows the revision, raising the house 4.6 feet. And all of the window changes on north and the west side, not visible from the public right of way, and don't believe that the window changes on the east side are either. Here is Cheryl Cave with Gordon Lamont. Go through the
I'm Cheryl Keenan with Gordon Learn Pine. We developed the site plan to accommodate the change in elevation for the newly elevated structure. We're proposing a few gentle terraces to take you from the sidewalk up to the higher elevation finished floor. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
My fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question for staff. So the board recently reviewed Or supplemental. That affected. Yeah, or was that designed to account?
I don't believe that design was accounted. I believe that was when we were still.
So are we, that hasn't been constructed yet, I assume. Fast construction. Happy, I know you're fast, but it's not that fast, is it?
I'm Phil Ashford, the worst thing's drawing.
There he is. Oh, Phil, I didn't see him back there behind the podium.
There is the same design, as the previously approved design. It's just the elevation. Now, we did come back and ask for moving some windows on some elevations that aren't visible from the public right away as part of this application. Because we talked with city officials and understood that we could move openings on the zero lot line as long as we didn't increase the square inch openings. And that house has a 6-foot wall on the second floor. And so the window head heights are at 5'6", and so we wanted to do these little cavity doors just to get those window heights up high enough to be able to.
Okay.
And again, they're not visible from the street.
Not include them in the description since they weren't visible. So they weren't.
Oh, okay.
So really, the application tonight is primarily, we went through the SHPO process and we're not given the variance. And so we are now requesting to raise the house to the 4.5 feet above where it is now to meet the city and the FEMA requirements. Wertimer and Klein's drawings are the most important part of this because they've done a great job at hiding that increase in elevation through that deep run of the property. There's no sudden change in grade. It's a little slope to the drive, a wall, a few steps, a terrace. And so it's well medicated in my opinion, but that's the elevation that you can see from the street. The rest of it is buried up.
Trying to understand because we applications for respond to that. Call it, I don't know what we call it. It's an approved process.
Well, we were given final approval last time.
And it was raised up to the.
No, so now we're back with the same house
Okay.
at the new elevation.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. We're calling it a part of the house, but it's not a part of the house yet.
Right, we're asking for it.
Right. You see, that's just where I'm coming from, you know, difference there. Procedurally how that works, because I mean, it seems, I understand the presentation, that part does seem straightforward.
Since it has final approval, we can treat it as though it is there and we can approve it.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to make sure of. Okay, great, thank you.
And sir, you had started to speak. Did you want to respond?
He spoke very well.
Any other board questions for the applicant at this time? In the public?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application to elevate the historic structure due to FEMA requirements at 0 Gibbs. As background, HCF along with Preservation Society supported a request for a FEMA variance last year that was unfortunately denied. While we would prefer that the former garage carrot structure is not elevated, we believe the proposed design is conservative and hope that the applicant can have a good working relationship with impacted neighbors through the duration of the project. Thanks.
Anyone else speaking from the public? All right, Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations.
I noted, staff just wanted to observe that the FEMA variance requested was denied, and that staff is recommending final approval.
Did the applicant want to respond to anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations? The applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Then that Chapeau would give this variance.
The city and Chapeau. And Linda was on the other side of that.
So.
I think the plan does a good job trying to mitigate the change. I think architecturally, it's really disappointing to have to, I mean, this building should not be in the air. The magic of this building is that it is a ground floor building tucked back down a driveway. And it now has a bit of a castle feel. And I think it's really disappointing to see that happening. But our charge as a board has been to allow raising of structures in flood prone areas. And so I have to be at peace with that, but it's unfortunate.
I don't have a lot to add. I agree with our members' comments. I think it, in a way, it is unfortunate, but faced with the inevitability of this, and I do not believe, and I think this, just does not violate our standards for elevation. It's done subtly, and we cannot expect people to potentially in the water. So I'm in favor.
Yeah, I think that SHPO should probably get a letter just acknowledging that full board is disappointed. I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, they need to know where we're coming from.
If I can interject, and I hope that Bill doesn't, I was working for Arts Construction at the time that the FEMA variance was for. The original carriage house is encased behind the brick veneer. Maplewood and Aaron Minigan up to see the attic and the carvings in the attic. All exists. It's behind the brick veneer, but SHPO's stance was that because the brick veneer was added in 1968 and was not historic, that the house was no longer historic. So but we tried, we really tried to. And it was unfortunate, but SHPO refused.
If there could be a board comment for staff to. Lisa. We can do it on that. Final approval.
Motion on the floor for final approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Fillmore. Vote. Glenn?
Jay in favor.
Phil?
Yeah.
In favor.
Chair majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Do we have anyone here from Dufain Street? 95 Dufain? All right. Moving on to agenda item number 12, 656 King Street. Frankie, could you give us an introduction overview, please?
656 King is requesting a approval of a mural. The structure was not surveyed and is in the old historic district. It's based in this parcel of King Street, which has this sort of central alleyway cutting through the property. This is the existing site.
Just a little history to add to the application process. This came before the city originally as a signage, staff level signage submission. And because of the stenciled logo that we're proposing, which is out of the range of allowable signage percentages, Frankie and the city architect thought it needed to come before the board, so here we are. In terms of just how we arrived at the design that you're looking at, if you could go to actually start with the second image, really where the focus started. Basically, this building is kind of a living easel of sorts in more areas than others, and especially in the courtyard area, where there's a famous artist, Shepherd Ferry, that did the mural to the left. The owner of the building, Frank Hagood, has done a unique thing as an owner and just allowing the tenants to kind of have free will with what they propose to do with their frontage of the building. So it's created this kind of very unique, eclectic feel. The first thing that we noticed when we took control of the space that Avoxy was in, which is this little blue section on the courtyard side, was that their branding kind of separated what naturally had an aesthetic that could very well be joined and complementary to one another just in the color palette, which coincidentally this warm dark gray is in our branding palette as well. So it just seemed natural to use that as the base color of the wall. And of course our logo is branded. And then just we felt like a little bit of playfulness with the mural aspect of things was in order and would contribute. So the mural part of this application is just the halftone gray logo, oversized, that would be kind of stenciled on the wall. And so paint, logo, and signage, and then that oversized logo. Here's the other facade. And so in keeping that branding wise, etc., the facade that we have facing towards the rear is just a similar application. I think to the left of this, there's kind of a random, I really don't even know how to characterize it. It's kind of a sort of circular patterns in the form of an art piece. That is the facade to the left of us. But I felt like this was kind of a standing facade to do with what we wanted.
Thank you. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? And what did you say your name was?
I'm sorry, Jerry Chan.
Okay.
Sorry.
I never want to call someone what's on.
Sorry, I shouldn't
Questions?
Jerry, the windows would remain as is essentially, are they, I think they're glass block or?
They are, yes, sir.
So they'd be replaced or remaining what they are?
Remaining as they are.
Okay.
The only thing we are proposing is that canopy is a clear anodized to match the halftone of the logo.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Do we have anyone speaking from the public? Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Right, so this parcel on King Street includes a number of murals on facades facing internal to the property, leading to the eclectic nature of the development. Structure itself does not front King Street, and the design will have limited visibility except down the little alleyway and from Septima Clark Parkway, the overpass. I did have one comment regarding the awning on the side. You said you're painting it. It appeared off-centered on the drawing, so we were just. That was a drawing glitch.
Drawing.
Okay. Then we will withdraw that comment. Staff had no other objections other than because of the size of the logo, it had to be considered a mural. That's good. Yeah, so we are recommending final approval with it. And actually, I withdrew the comments of final approval. It's our recommendation.
Mr. Trano, did you want to respond to anything raised in the staff comments? All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote. Rounded, I agree. It fits in with the surroundings.
Considering the context. Interesting.
And I think it's careful note that we have reviewed and approved other murals on adjacent buildings in this little enclave and slash mural, but I think we agreed as a board years ago that this particular structure or group of buildings was paintable and stylizable. So that shouldn't be confused with other locations, but in this particular location, I'm comfortable.
Yeah. So this does not as a board decision set a precedent for working around sign ordinances by calling it.
Looking on Google Maps and just to add, I mean, teak and table, but this totally fits in with, I don't think it would create a precedent for other
The
areas.
most visible is from up on the overpass or on the curved, but the building to the left of it's crap. I mean,
Sounds like there's some consensus.
for approval.
We have a motion on the floor for final approval made by Glenn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Bill, put it to a vote. Fillmore?
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill? Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Just entered the room, so I'm going to assume 95 Ethan is still not here. So we'll move on to, so agenda item number 13, 62 Queen Street has been deferred by the applicant. Agenda item number 14, 29 Race Street. Frankie, could you give us an introduction overview, please?
29 Race is requesting the demolition of the there was a site visit this morning. Sorry, over to
My name is Richard Fleury. I'm the owner of 29 Race Street, and we're requesting demolition of that attached carport on the side as you saw this morning. Our primary reason is strictly aesthetic. I think it's kind of awkward how it sits farther forward. It requires the car to sit almost on the road. The car can fit in the carport, but as we've seen, it's very awkward, so most people don't use it. We think the house, which I have drawings of, if you like to see it from an architect, would look much cleaner if we were able to bring back that back roof line that's kind of hidden behind it. And I'm not sure if you can put it on the screen, but I did a little kind of outline of an aerial shot that shows, and speaking with my architect, he kind of explained this to me a little bit better. If this was done with the original house, it just wasn't really done in good form. Building this thing, the roof lines don't quite line up, and it makes kind of an awkward gully that's shown on that aerial there, and that's why we did that outline. So it actually has a little area that has been from the water damage in the past where it makes a little gully, as well as the top ridge doesn't quite line up with the secondary roof line that we'd like to kind of expose by removing this. And then there's essentially 5 feet of space beside this to the right, but from the aesthetic look of the house, it's kind of just like overgrown grass and not really used space. By removing this carport, we could shift our driveway slightly and put a nice landscape bed around the house versus it being right up against the house and still have room for a driveway. So that's our reason. It's just strictly aesthetic reasons. We think this house itself is a pretty kind of awkward brick ranch right now, and we'd like to make it a lot nicer.
Thank you, Mr. My fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? All right, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Thank you.
Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society feels that the carport of this property is a unique feature that contributes to the character of the house and appears to be part of the original design intent. So we would encourage the applicant to think about creative ways to reuse and adapt it rather than demolish it. Thank you.
April Wood is our Charleston Foundation. We've reviewed the application for demolition of the historic carport at 29 Ray Street. This feature is original to the house and a character-defining feature. Many houses of this period in the Upper Peninsula have similar carports. Secretary of Interior Standards state the following: the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a property should be avoided. We respectfully recommend denial of this application as this removal would completely change the character of this charming house. Thank you.
Have any other public comment? Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
The brick piers at the carport have the same brick and mortar that exists on the house, and because as in sandboard maps, we can assume that the carport is either original or constructed shortly thereafter. Element, which is an example of Charleston's vernacular architecture, and it should be retained. That recommendation is denial.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Clark, did you want to respond or clarify anything raised in the city staff comment or the public comment?
Just that we respectfully disagree, but understand.
All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
I would say that I do agree with staff and with actually beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think it's actually on the building. I think that's. I mean, there's something there you can work with. So you might have a little bit of room to land. I can tell you with most certainty, it's.
I agree with Fabio. It's certainly original to the house, and it would be hard to say it's not defined. So nice, the argument that it's, signing it today, we wouldn't make it. It's not a valid argument. We say architecturally defining features all the time that might not have been executed, might not have been designed in the way we might think, but they're important. Their relationship to their time, to the structure, in favor of keeping it.
Agreement with staff. I think we looked at the Sanborn maps. Doesn't have a carport, but it has a deep porch, and I think it adds to that streetscape. And well, it not really adds because it's been there since I think the 19th. So, but I'm not in favor of demolishing it. I agree.
I agree with what's been said, and I think hopefully long-term you learn to love it because it is actually pretty cool. And while the board is careful not to set precedents, I will note that a couple of years ago, we wholeheartedly denied a very, very similar application where our denial actually prevented a property from being sold. And we felt that strongly about removing the carport off of the same vintage house within 8 minutes of here that we created, a bit of heartache for somebody financially. But I feel like this being so nearly identical, I couldn't vote in a different way since we already made a decision on such a really similar scenario.
A motion on the floor for denial. Do I have a second? Put it to a vote. Glenn? Bill? Fillmore?
Yeah, in favor.
Vote to the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kalari. Item number 15, 15 is 15 Savage Street. Just take credit. I'm going to take credit. Frankie, can you give us an introduction overview, please?
Wait, just so that it could be number 15 on the agenda, I'd like to put that on the record. 15 Savage Street is requesting conceptual approval for changes to convert it from duplex to single family. The addition of a rear porch, elevation of historic structure due to FEMA requirements. It's historic districts. Existing site photos. Text and Savage. Yeah, photo of 15, I did find sister house, 13 Savage Street, before the piazzas were right in that spot. And with that, I will turn it over to that.
Thank you, I'm Becky. I'm presenting on behalf of the owners, Kevin Hudson and Alan Duncan. They've actually owned this house for 10 years. It's a duplex rental, and they have always intended to, when they retire, to move down here and restore it to single family. And so they have a pretty significant renovation plan to make that conversion. And as part of that, they want to elevate it. They're one of what we would have called a few years ago the three timers, flooding in 15, 16, and 17. So they really kind of want to take care of that as part of this project. Next slide, please. This is the survey just showing the elevation about 4.5 on the site, with the first floor at about 7. And the FEMA, we would be going to 13, which we'll see in a minute, which would be the 11 plus 2. These are the Sanborn maps. Next slide. As Frankie mentioned, the house is one of the 4 sister houses from 9 to 15. Number 9 having been raised, it's at the bottom center. That was done a few years ago. And really that kind of sets the tone for us, what we're looking to do. Basically, because we would be a bookend, we would be at the far end, the north end of the 4 sister houses. Next slide. This is number 15, which actually had significant, unfortunate renovations over the years, where the piazza was taken off, and a 1950, the house itself is 1890s, and a 1950s addition sort of wraps the back of the building, which you're seeing part of that at the bottom right. Next slide. This is a shed at the very back. I just wanted to make a note that's going to be removed. That's not historic fabric, but we will be taking that down. Next slide. This is the existing site plan. Next slide. Our intent is really to raise the house itself, and on the street and on that south part to do basically a restoration of the piazza in an elevated form, and then to add a small rear porch, which we have zoning approval for that encroachment. Next slide. This is the first floor plan. Again, you can see just a fairly, there's a certain amount of renovation that needs to be done to convert it to single family instead of the duplex. And you can see the piazza on the street as well as the rear porch. Next slide. Second floor showing the renovation. Next slide. This is the roof plan. It's always interesting to look at the roof plans. I always feel like that's where you can see a little bit of the patterns with the original building, and then that 1950s addition really wrapping the south and the rear of the building. Next slide. On the left will be the street front, and at the top is the existing condition with the roof with that basically a 2x4 bracket. The ironwork isn't historic, but we will be saving it to reuse on the property, any of the brackets and things like that. But our goal really on the bottom left is to, we've studied the details of the other sister houses, and we're really looking to kind of bring back the look of that piazza. At the same time, we're requesting to go back to the 2/2 windows. They're still in the only ones that are in good condition are the ones that were protected by the roof on the south elevation. We'll see that in just a minute. But we are requesting to go to that configuration. On the right is the rear elevation, which is not visible from the public way. And that you can see the 1950s addition at the top, and then what we're proposing at the bottom with that small rear porch. Next slide. This is the south elevation with the existing, obviously at the top, with an entry and different entries to the 2 units. And at the bottom is the piazza as we're proposing it. And then a couple of those windows that we're proposing to change to the 2/2. And what we're proposing is that in the original part of the house to do wood, true wood, double hung, and then we're requesting in the 1950s portion to do clad. And in that elevation, you can see the rear porch at the far left. Next slide. This is the north elevation. And again, there are only slight window. We're trying to use most of the same openings, except there are a couple there at the back where we're trying to, in kind of the family room in the kitchen, where we're changing the configuration a little bit, but again, we're requesting to go to all 2/2 windows. Next slide. This is the streetscape. At the far left, you can see first is number 7, which is not one of the sister houses, but then obviously number 9 was elevated a couple of years ago. Then 11 and 13 are not elevated, and then we're at the far right. And we would be elevated again, really looking at the details and of the other sister houses as well as the one that's elevated. Next slide. This is the sections just to simply show the access from the street to the piazza on the bottom. Next slide. And then the existing on the left and the proposal on the right. Thank you.
My fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
That little louver up there on the parapet, and it's different than every other sister. What is that?
It just existed. That's the way that's existed.
That was original?
I don't think so. Actually, I think that this one has been so modified that was at some point. So the owner would probably entertain going back to the more original detail if that was.
I have no issue going with, especially seeing it with the streets and the sister houses. And especially on which facade it is, but I'm looking at the front. I guess there's some different on that back portion, making them uniform.
Graphically, like, because at least graphically, the other ones, sister houses look like the
I think on this house, the front openings and then the openings of the piazza seem like the original size. And then it does seem like on the rest of our building that there's just changes over time. Sizes.
That's just a graphic. All the windows look.
I think the hoods on the other one also, also create a little bit of a difference. But we could take a look at that and just see if there's kind of a size difference on that. Something, yeah, exactly. So we'll take a look at that as we make that change.
Any other questions at this time? Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Preservation Society really appreciates the applicant reaching out to us on this project, and we are supportive of this proposal that relates successfully to the previously elevated sister house at 9 Savage. Per the design guidelines for elevating historic buildings, the first elevation of a sister house must inform future elevations of sister houses, and we think this project represents an appropriate response to precedent. However, we would encourage continued study of the treatment under the piazza to better relate to the previously elevated sister house, with particular attention to the width of the brick piers and vertical orientation of the screening. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking from the public? Frankie, will you give us city staff comments and recommendations?
As Steph would like to note that this structure did receive a zoning special exception for setbacks in April. And point out that the rear porch is not visible from right away. That they were planning on salvaging the ironwork, which was comment number 1. Back to comment number 2 regarding the proposed arches, because when she was talking, I noticed that they matched number 9, which I didn't notice. So staff is recommending conceptual approval.
Ms. Fenna, did you want to respond to anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations? The applicant's presentation is now closed. We're in board discussion and a vote.
Oh, just initially, I think nearly everything we're seeing here is positive, and I certainly commend fix some of the wrongs that have been done here. Becky, I think your arched foundation is a little different from the arched foundation that was approved at number 9. I don't know. I mean, how do we feel about, should they match? Should they not?
Oh, that's one reason I was kind of asking that question about the windows, because like the windows on the others appeared to be wider or something, and then maybe the arches down there responded to those, and then the windows narrower or bird in, and it looks like Becky's responding to that. So I would just, I'm encouraged definitely from where we are now with conceptual. That's good. I was really just trying to make points maybe for your next submittal, so it might just be looking at that and maybe looking hard at number 9 at Conservation Society's points. I think those are all very good points about some issues of number 9 as well. So I would believe if those points are all addressed sort of as a cumulative thing, this is going to sail through from here. Wondering if maybe this thing has been altered in a lot of ways, maybe subtle ways as well. So I think in the idea that you're going to be correcting the windows, you can maybe even correct the size of the windows if that is a point. Verify with based on precedent. It's so nice to have examples right next door.
I felt looking at that, I think those windows are a little smaller than the windows.
I'm betting they found a standard size window in the catalog and they just sort of padded that into what it appears to be.
The arches, I mentioned it. I think the 2/2s are nice. Yeah, I don't think they have to be identical to 9. I think they sort of need to work with whatever the windows are above them on that house. Whether those windows, there's evidence that they were a different size, and that's returned, then maybe the arches change as the project goes forward. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge improvement of that house.
Yeah, I mean,
earlier iterations.
All of these, I think, as they've evolved, they all have subtle little differences at this point. The hoods are different. The pitch of the roof on the hood is different. I think if you'll just study the windows, once you get that far and determine, if they should be adjusted, then so be it. I mean, from my photos, the distance between the shutters to the corner boards appear to be about the same. So I don't think the windows are too far off. I think there's a lot of optical illusion with the hoods, although, yes, what is it? 15 and 11 are both missing their hoods, and 11 and 13 have them. So you'll figure it out.
And of course, the way those windows wider, which may make the lights appear smaller.
I don't have any affinity for that little louver vent or whatever that is up there. It only seems to indicate maybe there was some sort of maybe a pitched roof back there at some point. No idea why it would be up there.
Well, all three of them have a round one. All three of the other ones have a round one.
Yeah. Just throwing that out for, I think everybody's comfortable conceptually, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
So Hale's just going to make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments. Becky's heard the other comments. On American Preservation Society's comment, the other liberation comment forward. So I'll leave it at that. Conceptual approval.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments, just noting that staff has withdrawn comment 2, so this is just staff comment 1. Do I have a second?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill? Glenn? Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
And while this wasn't part of the motion, I would say to staff that I feel like if Ms. Fenno doesn't come back at the next level with anything that is different from what the board has reviewed, staff should be able to continue onward with this. I don't think we're asking for anything earth-shattering to be different.
Staff's comfortable with that. We didn't make a motion for final. Additional motion. Is that your?
I'm just more making a comment that if all she's doing is refining.
It would have to come back to us.
We'll see you shortly.
I'll make a motion.
We can have, I mean, we'll make an additional motion.
We voted on the first.
We have voted on the first motion, but I think we can vote that this motion is to, override the prior motion because we need it to go away and just make a new motion.
So
We can, let's amend the motion. It's not make the prior motion. Do we have a motion for an amended?
yeah, I would like to amend the previously ratified motion that if staff sees appropriate, this could proceed forward at staff level.
So was that a motion for conceptual approval with final review?
By staff, if staff feels appropriate. I'm just trying to keep the wheels turning.
Bring it back to the board and say they find it's a problem.
Okay, do we have a second to vote? Bill?
In favor.
Glenn?
In favor.
Fillmore?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the amended motion passes unanimously.
I'm just thinking, since we are staffing up these days, if things can keep moving forward at staff level.
Things that, this is not controversial at all. I agree. What is 151 motion?
Maybe they don't want more work.
I don't either.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
So it was withdrawn by staff since the board had made that determination this morning.
Okay, so agenda item number 16, 151 Moultrie Street was withdrawn by staff. We are on the 17th and final item, 8 Trumbo Street. Frankie?
They're in here for owner.
Staff authorized them to not attend since it is a vested right and they're at a conference. So.
Okay.
8 Trumbo is requesting their first 1-year extension, which was previously approved July 23rd, 2020. Approval. Gotta skip through the presentation.
I think this is actually the perfect scenario that Fillmore and I spoke about previously. Skip ahead, so that, if we're all on the same page as a board. I think we can move, there's no public comment. I think we can move on. The city staff recommendation is,
Staff just made an observation that it is a vested right first year extension, so we're recommending final approval. Or extension.
approval of the extension.
Approval of the extension.
We'll move into board discussion and a vote. We have a motion on the floor for approval of the extension. Do I have a second?
Second.
Get to a vote, Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yeah.
Favor.
chair votes the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Well, I have one question.
One question, the
Oh.
person is not here.
So procedurally, do they defer to the next month or do they have to reapply? Linda? You're the expert in the room.
95 Jaffe did not show up.
Just indicate that, you know, the applicant wasn't there, and then we get next agenda.
We did
That's, I think,
defer
how we've done it in
until
the past. So.
I just didn't know if they have to reapply or it just kicks on to the next agenda automatically. Okay, whatever.
It would be deferral, just like, I think we've done this prior. We've had a couple.
We did
Prior
a
ones.
previous meeting.
Procedurally, I think since we had deferred it to the end of the meeting and they haven't shown present, I'll make a motion to defer 95 Bufane until the July meeting, as long as they wish to remain on the agenda. Is that fair?
We have a motion on the floor for deferral of 95 Fane to the July meeting. Are we having one or two meetings? Two. The first meeting in July.
If they wish to.
Just to proceed.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Yes.
None opposed. Okay, now do I have a motion to adjourn? Second,
So moved, or
All in-
yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
Comment, Berry Street is another step. New construction. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, it's-
Right.